Even though oil prices have started to come down a bit due to fears of a recession, they're still more than double what they were 2 years ago. And while high prices are a problem for many global economies, they've actually been a boon for OPEC Plus countries. Here's how OPEC Plus members are benefiting from Russia's war in Ukraine, and how OPEC Plus's decisions have given Russia a buffer against sanctions. First, let's look at who makes up OPEC Plus and why high oil prices are so important to them. OPEC Plus includes the 13 members of the Saudi-led Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, otherwise known as OPEC, plus 10 non-OPEC producers led by Russia. Together, these countries control more than half of the world's oil output. And while there are disputes and sometimes failure to follow through on commitments, they generally work together to exert control over the price of crude. As one analyst I talked to put it, coordination is king. Some oil experts say that OPEC Plus has a so-called Goldilocks objective. They don't want oil prices too hot, since that can tip the world into a recession, but they also don't want oil prices too cold, because many of these countries rely on revenue from oil to balance their budgets and pay for things like social services and military spending. Even though the key architect of the OPEC Plus alliance, Mohammed Barkindo, recently passed away, his efforts are likely to continue impacting oil producers and consumers for years to come. When the pandemic hit, falling demand for oil caused the OPEC Plus alliance to briefly crack and oil prices to collapse, battering many OPEC Plus countries. So when the world opened back up and demand for oil bounced back, OPEC Plus countries agreed to start pumping more oil together, but at a slow and steady pace to support prices. That slow and steady pace frustrated some global leaders, like President Biden, as oil prices surged.
The White House is confronting the spike in gas prices by telling OPEC it must do more to support global production.
Then, Russia invaded Ukraine, and oil prices soared even higher.
The price of oil surged over $100 a barrel in hours after Russia launched the attack.
While many Western nations slapped sanctions on Russia and cut ties with the Kremlin, OPEC Plus leaders continued to honor that slow and steady deal they struck with Moscow, despite pressure from the US. At the time, Saudi and Emirati leaders declined calls with President Biden as he was trying to contain a surge in oil prices and alienate Russia, since Russia's oil revenues are used to finance its war.
Everybody leaves his politics at the outside door of that building.
So now we have high oil prices, and those high oil prices are benefiting OPEC Plus countries. Here are 5 reasons why. First, their economies are growing. While the war in Ukraine is dealing an economic setback for much of the world, the IMF estimates that oil producers in the Middle East and North Africa will receive an additional $320 billion more than expected this year. Some countries, like Iraq and Algeria, are using the extra cash to help their citizens, boosting pensions, expanding benefits, and passing laws to mitigate rising costs. Other OPEC Plus members, like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, are spending billions of dollars abroad to project power and enhance their security interests. In recent months, Riyadh and Abu Dhabi have struck investment deals and approved aid packages to the tune of billions of dollars to help regional neighbors like Pakistan, Turkey, and Egypt. And according to analysts I spoke to, high oil prices might even help lead to a revived nuclear deal with Iran, another OPEC Plus member, since the country could bring up to 1.5 million barrels a day of oil to the market. And finally, another OPEC Plus member that has benefited from high oil prices, Russia. Even though Russia isn't producing as much oil as it normally would because of sanctions, high oil prices are helping it make more money on the oil that it is selling. According to the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, in the first 100 days of Russia's war, it raked in $97 billion from fossil fuel exports. So why does all of this matter? Because oil prices affect all of us, but also because Russia continues to use oil revenue to finance its war. Some OPEC leaders are saying that even if they wanted to pump more oil, they can't. They're reaching max capacity. Now, there are fears of a recession, and some investors think slowing economic growth could push demand for oil lower once again. And when demand falls, prices usually do too. That's why some analysts say that OPEC Plus isn't likely to kick Russia out of the alliance or dramatically ramp up pressure on Moscow, because OPEC Plus will ultimately need Russia's cooperation in order to control oil prices in the future. Speaking of oil prices, they are sure to be a hot topic when President Biden visits Saudi Arabia later this month. Check out this video for a preview of the talks. Thanks for watching.